Good morning, everybody. In the absence of the Chair and Vice Chair, can I ask members to appoint a Chair for the meeting, please?
Happy for Roger to take the chair. I'll grudgingly accept.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Wigtown Area Committee on the 1st of May. I would like to let you know at this point of the meeting it will be live streamed on Teams and that our recording will be available online shortly after we finish the meeting. Members may notice that when calling speakers, I will refer to them formally using their full title, e.g. Councillor Smith, so that it's clear who the councillors are, and by a process of elimination, also who the officers are. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones, switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. All the usual standing orders apply, including any votes being taken by a roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please leave the Teams meeting for that period of time and write leave in the Teams chat function, and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time, speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. And please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. So item number 1, the sederant and apologies and the Chair's approval of remote participation. Could I ask Claire for the sederant and apologies?
Okay, thank you, Chair. We've got 6 members present this morning. Apologies from Councillors Ingalls and Hill. There's 2 members present in the Council chambers, being yourself and Councillor Scobie. We've got the remaining 4 members all present on Teams, being Councillors Dashbar, Justy, Hagman and McCammon, and we have our 2 youth councillors present on Teams, being Susanna Kowalska and Max Ewan. Thank you.
And I confirm agreement to remote participation. I would also like to welcome the youth councillors Max and Susanna along to today's meeting. Item number 2, are there any declarations of interest? Do members have any statement of connection or declaration of interest to declare on the definition? A statement of connection. For transparency reasons, members may wish to make a public statement, or a declaration of interest. Members would now require to leave the meeting for that item. Do we have any of those?
Councillor Justy and Councillor Dashbar.
Okay, Councillor Justy.
Yeah, thanks. I've got a declaration of interest to declare in item 6. Actually, no, aye. Item 6 on the fact that my business sponsors the awarding Worcester's awards ceremony. Also, my laptop's just about to update, so I will be going out the meeting and rejoining in the next 15 minutes. Thank you.
Grand, thank you, Councillor Justy. Councillor Dashbar.
Hi, good morning. Thanks, Chair. Yes, statement of connection on item 9 by virtue of the fact that I've got a family member on board of the furniture project and their name is listed on page 75, so I'll exclude myself for that item. Thanks.
Grand. Thank you, Councillor Dashburn. And Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members and everyone. Yeah, it's a statement of connection only in terms of item 10. I've been invited previously to get a tour of the main shed facilities in Newton Stewart, but it is simply a statement of connection. There's no conflicts of interest at that point. Thanks.
Grand. We'll move. Oh, and also Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, I think it's item 9, Chair, and it's just a statement of connection. Very casual in that I was involved in the setting up of a furniture project many years ago, but I've got no interest to declare.
Grand. Wonderful. We'll move on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting of the 6th of March 2024. Members are asked to approve these minutes as an accurate record. Are we happy to approve? Excellent. I'll take silence as a yes. Item number 4. The 1st of April 2023, 31st of March 24, the 6-month assessment of the Education and Learning Quality and Curriculum Service Plan for 23-24. Report by Director of Education Skills and Community Wellbeing. Our first report is the Education and Learning 6-month assessment from the 1st of April 23 to the 30th of September 23. I am pleased to note that Education and Learning continue to disaggregate data and produce a report specific to Wigtown Area Committee, along with region-wide reporting, which is greatly appreciated. This is largely a positive report with numbers moving in the right direction. I am sure members will also be pleased to see that attendance has increased since the same period last year, and that exclusion rates have decreased, along with a 0 exclusion rate for looked after pupils. It is also good to see the positive inspectorate report for Rafad Primary and the positive comments about staff, pupils and the quality of teaching and learning there. Members here are very interested in achievement and attainment for young people, and I'll open the floor for members' questions and comments. We also have Jim Brown here today from Education and Learning to answer any members' questions. Members, over to you. Councillor Dashburn.
Hi, Jim. Good morning. Yeah, it's good to see that the little positives where they are, but you know, because Rafad Primary School is doing so well, just a request really, is it possible to get sort of data communicated to members in terms of how all the other schools are doing? Because, you know, it says that Rafad is doing well on these quality indicators, but just so we can know how the other schools in our ward are doing on those quality indicators as well. You know, are they good? Are they bad? Are they medium? Just if we could get that maybe emailed or emailed to members, thanks.
Jim, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Dashby. Yes, no, it is extremely heartening to see how well Karen Logue, head teacher of Rafad, is doing, and how well those young people are achieving and attaining. That's absolutely great news. What you'll know is, because I suppose this is the performance report for a particular period of time, merely just to explain, in a sense, the reason the report is contained within this performance report is because it fell within that particular window. What I can do is I can certainly send the link to HMIE, which then gives the listings of all schools that have been inspected and the outcomes of those. Equally, Councillor Dashput, what we have is a statutory expectation that every school has to have a school improvement plan, and part of that, schools will make their own assessment of how they're doing. So in other words, the HMI process is a validating process. It's not coming in necessarily doing two. It's supposed to be doing with helping schools, head teachers, to understand how they evaluate themselves effectively. So schools will have determinations on their own performance, which are described within those improvement plans, but equally it's that HMI website that has got all school outcomes in it. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks.
Grand. Thank you, Jim. Do we have any further questions?
Councillor Husband.
And Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. Wasn't sure whether to put hand up or right speak, but I can do both. Yeah, thanks, Jim, for the report. I mean, I guess I've got a couple of comments really. I mean, just on the back of what you said there, Jim, about the HMIE. When I look up Dumfries and Galloway, I don't get anything, so I need to look up specific schools, I'm assuming, rather than the postcode of the specific school. So I think, I mean, following on from Councillor Dashford's request, would it be possible to get a list of all our schools within Wigtownshire and actually just comment of when they were last inspected? Because I would be keen to know where we are. And I appreciate we have sometimes planned inspections, but we also have unannounced inspections, and we don't know when they are, but it would be really useful to know where are we within the cycle of our schools being inspected. And I appreciate that COVID got in the way of some of those going forward. So I think it would be useful just to get that sort of snapshot. In terms of the actual report, the chair made comment about seeing the detail of where we are regionally and then disaggregated locally, but I can't see the regional data in there. I can only see the local detail. So, for example, it's got the attendance rate for Wigtownshire schools and the target, but it doesn't have the Dumfries and Galloway. So, it would be quite useful to know where are we in terms of Wigtownshire across the region. Is Wigtownshire doing better than, say, Nithsdale, or are we, trailing behind? I don't have anything to compare it to, and I think that would be really useful. That maybe leads me on to my final point, which is there's not a huge amount of data in here, and I appreciate it's a half year and those are the indicators that have been decided. I know that there is an ongoing piece of work, or there's been reference that there's an ongoing work in terms of also looking at the role of area committees and what information we get. And I guess my questions maybe back to governance on that one as to where are we, because it's, clearly members want to be able to get the relevant information, but if we're only getting little snippets here and there, it makes our role really, really hard to be able to go back to our communities and say with confidence, this is where we are within education within Wigtownshire. So where are we in terms of the review of area committees, in terms of reviewing the likes of these reports? Thank you.
Are you able to come in there about the content in there, Jim, please?
Thank you, Councillor Marsh, Chair. Thank you for the questions, Councillor Hagman. So, firstly, absolutely, you partly answered your own question there as well in terms of HMIE. I can happily provide you with those reports. You're absolutely right to say, of course, during COVID there were no inspections, and so there is this big gap. But I can get you that data. I think HMIE are really upping the number of schools currently that they're visiting. So I do anticipate and look forward to actually getting more teams into schools coming up. In terms of actual schools that have been recently done, Wigtown was done in 2022, as was Cacum and Cacowan. Rafad, this one was 2023, as you can see, and Port Patrick's just been inspected. So I hope that those numbers of schools getting inspected will pick up, and we'll have more to report on. I'm trying to go through my notes here. There's a number of questions there. Yeah, so that's the first point. Secondly, the comparison of Wigtown targets. I think you're probably saying Wigtown targets and outcomes against Dumfries targets and outcomes. I think that will probably come out through the annual in the May committee. But I can certainly have a look at that and see how that could be done in terms of putting your own targets against those of Dumfries and Galloway as a whole. I think what that does is, of course, it doesn't necessarily understand the context of why certain areas might have different targets, which tends to be in relation to things like Scottish Index of Multiple deprivations, but happy to look into that and see how we can get that answered. On the third one, the governance point, that I think probably is less through me in terms of where the area committees now go. I think your point more broadly, Councillor Hagman, in relation to what I understand is you know, happens within your own role. People ask you very specific questions, and I know that you will understand that. If you look at the performance, just that word, of schools, it includes hundreds and hundreds of different areas that could be measured. And you, of course, will get questions on potentially any of those. What we can't necessarily do is run a machine that then reports on everything that a school could possibly be measured on. So I think probably what's helpful is if that discussion about the role of area committee governance approach of that describes maybe what you would like to have in these reports, because then we can standardise that across all 4 areas. I hope that helps. Thanks.
Does that help, Councillor Hagman? Because it does sound like there will be a lot more data contained in the 12-month report.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think if I could just get a point of clarity back from you, Jim, you mentioned there the targets for Wigtownshire. So are the targets not a regional target? Have we got different targets per area committee area? Because my understanding was these are overall targets, and the is where Wigtownshire sits within those overall targets. But from what you've just said there is we've got specific targets for Wigtownshire, which is slightly concerning in itself, because surely we want to have the same targets for our whole region, do we not?
Thanks for that. No, you're absolutely, the targets will tend to come from government benchmarking, won't they? So what I was meaning more is in terms of the outcomes against targets, that there needs to be an understanding of context. But sorry if I miscommunicated that. It's the fine. Targets will tend to come from that the benchmark. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. And in terms of the governance arrangements, do we have a date from governance at all as to when the review of area committees is actually taking place?
I'll bring in Claire here, Councillor Hagman.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I understand there's been an undertaking given in previous Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee that the review of area committees would be after the summer recess.
Thank you.
Grant. And Councillor Scobie.
Maybe just building on what Katie was asking there, and Jim, you did say it's a localised report, and it's hard to say, what information do we require? And I don't expect you to be carrying all the information in your head. I think it's on more that the principles and safeguard our future in terms of our council plan and what an area committee, or from me, I would like to see in a report. And it's more to do with the parts there that are working to closing the attainment gap between the most and the least disadvantaged children and young people. And then it goes on, support the most vulnerable and ensuring that our pupils get the right support. And it's so that we know we are moving towards closing that attainment gap in our schools, and particularly in the Wigtown area, that I would hope we could see in a report. As I say, I don't expect you to give me the answers today, but for future reports and governance terms, to localise the report, to see that attainment gap. How we are using it, what are we doing, what schools doing with our PEF fund, how are they applying that to attain, to closing that attainment gap. That's the type of information, Jim, I would be looking for in a localised report, so that we can see schools are achieving what we hope they would be achieving, and so forth. So it's to localise it in the schools, so that we know that we are applying the principles and that we are dealing with young kids who are disadvantaged and require that additional support. It comes into additional support needs and so forth, so it's all contained in there, but there's no narrative to follow those principles. So that would be my ask, if you like, in terms of governance when they're localising the reports.
Would you have anything to add there, Jim?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Scobie. I fully understand the point, and you're absolutely right that the areas you mentioned are linked to our various plans. I think probably this is more, as you mentioned yourself, Councillor Scobie, one to do with how we make sure that the governance arrangements describe specifically what is expected within certain reports. I think, you know, I wouldn't want to just have a lot of different reporting frameworks for different areas. I think the thing to do is get a standardised understanding of exactly which areas within our various plans we want to really report on. I think in terms of the end of year performance report, there will be attainment in terms of Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation. So I think, as the Chair said, that has got a much more detailed approach, but I understand what you're saying, that you would like to have that on a more regular basis and at a regional level, area level rather. So, but like I said, I think I don't wish to be making promises here which might cut across governance, but I've certainly made a note, Councillor Scobie, of those areas, particularly the attainment gap, the attainment of our most vulnerable young people achievement, and then how PEF funding is targeting that. So I've made a note of those. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Jim. Are you happy with that, Councillor Scobie? Grand. I actually have one last question before moving to the recommendations. On page 16 at 4.4.3, it's in relation to the exclusion rate for looked after pupils. The value coming in there is 0. And when you go to the appendix for that, compared to the 22-23 value, the value achieved was 40. It just seemed quite a stark jump to go to 0. I just wonder exactly what that meant. Does it mean that looked after children are not excluded at all? Hence why the values come in at 0. And if that is the case, then is it suggesting that however unruly or disruptive a looked after child is or has been in class, that they still will not be removed because that is against the GURFEC policy? I just wonder if you could clarify that, please, Jim.
That's a really important point, and you bring onto the table there the two sides of this. The first point I've mentioned in relation to that, and I'm really pleased you've brought up the fact that this is a good piece of data, but also the fact that you're saying, but let's have a think bit beyond that. Is there a potential negative that an overwhelmingly good thing might also bring with an unintended consequence, you might say? Is our intention to do is to hold a seminar to look at both what you might call inclusion and exclusion. They aren't the opposite, oddly enough, you know, but they are seen sometimes within the same area of work, because we need to get across this idea that what exclusion was, or expulsion when I went to school, and that was what it was called, is very different to what we now do. We have got limited rights from government to temporarily exclude young people, and the purpose of that exclusion is specifically to sit down with whoever's necessary to be around the table to look at what we need to do to support that young person moving forward. It is explicitly not a punitive approach, and that is government guidance around this. So but like I say, I think there will be a lot more information about, well, what does that actually look like, and what might a plan be that comes out of one of these meetings, and so on and so forth. But I think will really help you in conversations you might have. In terms of that 0% figure, absolutely right. It's not actually percent, and I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because you get these numbers. It's per thousand is the exclusion thing, which needs another 0 after slash there. And what that means is, yes, there were no young people who were looked after and accommodated excluded between the dates that this report pertains to. And the drop from 40 appears to be, as you say, enormous, but because it's per thousand, it's actually it's a 4% drop, right? And what I can maybe sort of suggest as well is, because we've got comparatively few, I mean, very few looked after and accommodated young people, individual cases can have a massive impact on on the data. So it's a bit of a difficult one. It comes with health warnings around the data to say, actually, statistically, that drop is completely non-significant at any 95, 99% level. It is true, it's an accurate reflection of exactly the numbers. They were 40 per thousand, they're now 0 per thousand. But in reality, is that significant? Well, no, it's possibly indicative merely of the young people there at the time. So, so I absolutely take your caveat there, Councillor Marsh. I hope that the session will run, which will almost certainly be in the next school year, will help you to understand what the process of exclusion is and also how we're using people's needs are met. And I also take on board and have made a note of the caveat around, but let's make sure that if you like, a blanket approach to saying let's reduce exclusions does not then have the subsequent negative impact on other young people's learning in schools. So thank you for that comment.
No, thank you, Jim. No, absolutely. I look forward to the seminar. It'll be really useful, I think. And obviously, talking about individual cases, you know, we wouldn't want a particularly bad individual case to be getting it wrong for the 99% of pupils that are affected by that, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at there. But thank you for that. If we have no further questions, we'll move to recommendations. With 1, we have reviewed the 6-month summary. 2, we've considered the area-based achievements and developments. And 3, we've considered the aspects of performance to be referred to the relevant service committee. We all agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item number 5. The Social Work Services Directorate 6-month assessment of business plans for 2023-24. Performance from the 1st of April to the 30th of September 2023. Report by Chief Social Work Officer. This report covers services and projects that are vital to helping out our most vulnerable people. Again, members will be pleased to see area-based narrative. It is good to see some feedback on the outcomes for local communities from community payback, as I believe from previously requested, this was previously requested by members of this area committee. I think members of this committee previously had questions around the number of hours for community payback. It's still unspent. We have Gillian Greaveson here today to answer any members' questions. It is not Gillian. My apologies. Thank you. My apologies. We have Gail Greggs here today to assist us. Gail Guest. My apologies. I'll open up to members' questions. And we have Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for the report. Sort of a first point before I ask sort of specific questions. Some of the acronyms that they're not in the abbreviation glossary of terms, so I've no idea what the SHINE mentoring programme is, and it doesn't. I've had a look and it doesn't seem to say what that acronym even is. So just in terms of, can we make sure that we're actually explaining? So I guess that's my first question. What is SHINE mentoring? Because it doesn't explain. In terms of the 4.2.5 through to 17. I presume these are direct quotes. It doesn't actually make clear, but through my reading of these, I presume these are direct quotes from the organisations, which, you know, is really positive to get back on there. My specific question is 4.3.3 on page 25. It makes reference to most of our vacant social work and senior social work posts have been successfully filled. I guess my question is, how many vacancies do we do? How many do we have? Because most is not really very clear on that one. So yeah, how many vacancies have we currently got? And just really also just to put my thanks on record to the staff. I appreciate it's a really tough gig that our social workers are taking on, and you know, it cannot be an easy task. So just to put on record my appreciation to those staff that are taking forward this really important and absolute vital service within our communities.
Grand. Gail, could you come in there, please?
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Hagman. I don't know at this particular point, but I can find out how many vacancies. Obviously, this report relates to April to September last year. in relation to children and families, so I can clarify. Do you want to know the number of vacancies at that point or the current number of vacancies? Would that be more useful data?
I think probably let's go with the current. I appreciate it's a historical report, but if you don't have that information and you're going to find the information, it'd probably be helpful just to know the current point.
Okay, well, thank you.
Grand, thank you, Gail. And we have Councillor Dashburn.
Hi, Gail. Thanks for the
Hi,
report.
Councillor Dashburn.
Just a few little technical questions, I guess, more than anything else. 3.1 mentions the Social Work Services business plan. I see it was last done in October 2019. Just wondering when that would be up for renewal as a strategy, because that seems quite far away now, and especially because it was before a pandemic. Also, we've got the 3.3 talks about the key performance indicators that we've agreed to report to area committees. In the education report, we just had this nice little appendix telling us what those key performance indicators were, but there doesn't seem to be something similar or equivalent in this report. I know that you're both two different directorates, but I'm just wondering, you know, how we can sort of cross-reference and see actually these are the key performance indicators and this is how well we're doing. Just if we could get that sort of information at all. Thanks.
Sorry. Yes, Councillor Dashburn. The key performance indicators for the Social Work Department should in fact be included, and they can be included, and I can get that information for you pertaining to this report from Gillian Grieveson that would give you an indication of progress across the Social Work Department during that period.
Well, that suffice, Councillor Dashburn.
Yeah, and just wondering if you know when, also the first question, when the plan is up for renewal. Thanks.
That would be a question, I think, for the new head of Justice and Social Work, or the Chief Social Work Officer, and I can ask him to clarify that point in relation to the service plan.
Magic, thank you.
Grand, thank you, Gail. So we can come back to you with those answers, Councillor Dashburn. Councillor McCammon.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Gail, I just wondered if you had an update, or you could seek an update perhaps from Stephen Morgan. We had an update, I think it was a couple of months ago, on working relationships being set up between the police and social work with tackling antisocial behaviour. Again, I'm not sure if it's your remit, but if you could get an update to the figures for the progress on that in Wigtownshire, that would be great. I'm just keen to know how far we are getting with these meetings and if they are sustainable and worthwhile, basically.
Thank you, Councillor McCammon. No, that's not within our remit, antisocial behaviour, but again, I can clarify that information in relation to Stephen Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. One final question on that. Oh, no, Councillor Scobie, in you come.
Yeah, Chair, I'm looking at the 4.3 children and families, and I wonder if Gail could possibly answer or give an indication. We've broken into 4 teams. It's really on the foster and adoption. I'm looking very much at not only breaking into teams, but what is the total numbers of people who are in that category, who are fostering and adopting in Wigtownshire. And if there is a recruitment drive to increase that number, whatever that number may be, on that one. And it's on 433. And we have been successful in recruiting to most of our vacancies. Are we at full capacity in this area in terms of social worker, or is there still some vacancies that we haven't filled yet?
In terms of the foster and adoption, again, that's information I would need to clarify from Children and Families in relation to the Wigtownshire area. Vacancies, I can only speak on behalf of Justice Social Work. We are still running with some vacancies at the moment, but I can get the information clarified in relation to Children and Families in terms of Wigtownshire.
if you could, if that could be sent out to members in a briefing note, please. At least I would want to see it, you know, in terms of the number of foster carers there are, or foster and adoption carers there are, and how many vacancies we're still running with, and how long those vacancies have been open.
Is that something, Gail, that could be sent out to area committee members?
Yes, again, can I just clarify the vacancies in relation to Councillor Hardman's question? Are you looking for vacancies in relation to the current period, or vacancies in relation to the April-September in relation to this report?
No, but the current period, just how many vacancies we're running with, so we know, and the period that they've been vacant.
I can certainly request that we can identify what vacancies in the Wigtown area we've had in this quarter, because obviously that's a movable feast. So we'll be able to give an indication in terms of this quarter, in terms of children, families and justice social work, how many vacancies we have in our establishment at that time.
Will that suffice, Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, and there's an obvious question, because, you know, social work are running under pressure. Increased cases, I'm sure that's the same in Justice Department. So it's really to see just how much pressure the department is under when we look at the vacancies and the attempts to recruit, for how long the vacancies have been running. So that would be satisfying if that could be sent out in a briefing paper.
Gail, would that be possible?
Yes, I can confirm we'll send that information in a briefing paper.
Grand, thank you, Gail. Just one last point. It's very heartening to see the positive feedback from this service, especially the community payback team. I know Councillor Hill has visited the team working on these projects, and she was extremely impressed with the outcomes that have been achieved, especially given the very small numbers within that team. I had one last wee question. At 4.2.4 on page 24, it states that the community payback orders programme continued to be higher in D&G than at a national level. Is there any particular reason for that? Or
it's very difficult to ascertain why in Dumfries and Galloway we have higher programme requirements. You could argue that we're a victim of our success, because we are one of the areas in Scotland where we've been running programmes for well over a decade. So it's well established and popular with sentencers locally. But we consistently remain above the national average in delivery of programmes across Dumfries and Galloway.
That's grand. Thank you, Gail. If we have no further questions, we'll move to recommendations. Members were asked to 1. Review the overall summary of performance within the Chief Social Work Officer's business plan in the Wigtown area. 2. Consider additional area-based successes and developments. And yeah, that was us. Excellent. Item number 6. The Wigtown Area Committee, Discretionary Budget 24-25, Report by Head of Thriving Communities. And thank you once again, Gail. The next report in the Wigtown Area Committee, Discretionary Budget Report. This report for members is asking us to note the funding available and to agree the key priorities, processes and allocations for 2024-25. I will first ask members to note the total budget allocated to area committees across the region was £312,000, and the amount available for Wigtown being £59,904 plus the carryover of £1,600 from the 23-24 allocation, resulting in a total figure this year of £61,504. Are members happy to note that amount? Yep. I'll move on to discussion about this year's priority allocation presented for members' consideration in Appendix 2. Members will also note that a member seminar was held on this on the 27th of March, where proposed priority areas were identified. Ingrid Gebel is here, and is Gillian Collins in attendance for members' questions. I'll ask Gillian and Ingrid, is there anything else to add before we open the floor to questions?
Morning, thank you, Chair. No, we've nothing further to add to the report, thank you.
Grant, thank you, Ingrid. We have Councillor Hagman first.
Thanks, Chair. So first of all, apologies, I wasn't able to make the member seminar, but I did in fact go back and listen to, I was perhaps doing another task at the time because, you know, I think it was about an hour and a half. The seminar went on with a lot of discussion on £50 here or £100 there and looking at the list. I guess I think my reflections on that is it's a bit disappointing that we seem to just do the same thing every year and tweak it ever so slightly. I would be quite keen to do something a bit radical with the money and maybe pick one key aspect for the discretionary grant and actually put out a significant amount of funding to those specific points. But I appreciate it's a really difficult task because nobody wants to be the one to take away funding from an organisation that's maybe had it in the past. My question is, so in the report, page 27 talks about the members agreed the strategic framework at communities committee. So is that specific in Appendix 1? Is that fixed by communities? Because I note that Nithsdale area has an additional eligibility criteria, and can we take away from that? And my point really is that eligibility requirements, there's the first 3 bullet points. I'm not sure how we've monitored those in the past. So, you know, it references that fundraising activity by the organisation to secure financial support from other sources. How do we monitor that? And are there plans to make the event, project or facility sustainable without this funding? So again, when we look at some of the proposed suggestions for funding, some of these organisations have been on there for, I would probably hazard a guess, more than a decade, some of them. So actually, why have we got a criteria if we're not adhering to it? And then certainly the funding from discretionary budget should normally be the only council funding, excluding common goods funding. So again, are we sure on that one? And you know, I would take maybe some of the music clubs, for example. Have they had any other funding in terms of the YMI projects, etc.? How are we actually ensuring that it's fit for purpose and we're not just, you know, doing a tick box exercise to not put it blunt, or to put it bluntly? So that's sort of my questions around the comments. In terms of the allocation, which, as I say, was discussed, and I think Councillor Marsh, you're the only one in the room today that was actually in attendance at that one. I would just maybe ask, in terms of festival events, we seem to have 2 categories and we seem to be treating awarding Wigtownshire differently to all the other potential festival and events. So I guess my suggestion would be that we treat all festival and events equally and without precedent or without preference, and actually perhaps maybe reduce the awarding Wigtownshire down to £1,000 and put that £1,000 to the other events, because I note that the small grant scheme is capped at £1,000. So I'm just confused as to why that one event would get double every other event across Wigtownshire. So those are my comments and questions. So I don't know who wants to maybe come in on that. Thanks.
Ingrid, do you want to come in first of all to try and answer some of those? There's quite a few questions there.
Thank you, Chair. There is quite a few questions and I'll try and answer them as best I can, and if I miss anything then please let me know. So in terms of the making sure that organisations are compliant and sustainable, we do put them through the grants process where we check that, you know, all the organisations who are awarding funding are compliant. We also on an annual basis seek monitoring information from those organisations that's reported back to members, usually at the March committee. So that has happened year on year for as long as I've been managing this budget. In terms of the organisations that have been chosen, members have chose them as key initiatives that they want to support. So that's absolutely at members' discretion. And in terms of the mention of awarding Wigtownshire, that has been you know, a key initiative that members who have been at the seminar have recommended should receive that amount of budget. But again, that's in the hands of members to make a decision on that today.
Thank you, Ingrid. I'll just bring in Claire here for the governance part of your question.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, Appendix 1 of the report does make mention of Nithsdale Area Committee, and that information would have been in the report that was presented to Communities Committee. So it's Communities Committee that set the framework for all the area committees.
Do you want to come back there, Councillor Hagman?
Yeah, so I guess so 2 points. So Claire, if that's been set, is there any ability to amend those would be my first question, or are those just set? And I mean, I know that, or I see that we're being asked to note them. So is there no opportunity to change those? And I guess that my other question is back to yourself, Councillor Marsh. As Ingrid has pointed out there, the recommendations came from those at the seminar, which is not a decision-making seminar, but can I ask what the rationale was to specifically pull out awarding Wigtownshire over all the other festivals? For example, well, there's the Wigtown Country Festival this afternoon, there's the Oyster Festival, there's lots of arts festivals. Can I ask what the rationale at the discussion was as to why that one would receive double any other festival? Thanks.
Yeah, certainly. It was my recollection that this time last year we had quite a debate around awarding Wigtownshire, and that was decided at last year's committee at this point. At this seminar, we kind of took it as read. This was the template of organisations, and we felt that, well, it appeared to me that not a huge amount of change was required, but as far as I was aware, it was this time last year there was quite a large debate at the seminar and this committee in regard to award Wigtownshire, so it didn't really rear its head as such. We were happy and content to keep it as it was at this year's seminar.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, I would like to see consistency going forward. So, I mean, perhaps when we come to the sort of agreed final recommendations, I would like to see either we reduce that to 1,000 so it's in line with the others, or we increase the others for up to 2,000 so that it's in line, because I don't understand the rationale for treating one event differently to the rest. So that would be my suggestion, but clearly it would be useful to hear from other members on their thoughts on this one. Thank you.
Okay, I think Councillor Scobie had wanted to come in on that same point, so I'll bring Councillor Scobie in just now, and then it'll be Councillor Dasper.
Yeah, and Kerry's asked the question in terms of the rationale. I cannot understand the rationale as to, because we gave it last year, we give it this year. I think we've got to treat everyone with some form of equity, or at least fairness. So I remain puzzled in terms of the rationale. Could I maybe move on to the one, and it's reduced the Christmas lights in Stranraer by £500. If we are being consistent, and we have been consistent with all the other areas, why would we then reduce Stranraer by 500? And I hope you would expect me to be asking that very question, and at the same time give an uplift to Newton Stewart when we based that on the rationale of per capita of population. So it's to hear what the rationale behind reducing one but increasing the other. So maybe we could get an answer to that one before we actually start on a decision making.
Okay, Ingrid, could you come in at all there?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Chair. So just to clarify that members at the seminar did feel that they wanted to make a recommendation that the changes were made in terms of the allocations to Stranraer and Newton Stewart, and the rationale for that was on the need for Newton Stewart to purchase, install, store and organise the infrastructure arrangements themselves as a community, as opposed to Stranraer having that level of support from the community assets team. In terms of the infrastructure, the set-up, take-down, etc., etc. I hope that's helpful for members.
Yep, yeah, that was also, Councillor Scobie, my recollection of the seminar. It was I was made aware that Stranraer have that extra financial assistance from the council in the erection and taking down of the lights, whereby the new scenario of Newton Stewart, this was a voluntary charitable group that's been set up. They've raised a phenomenal amount of money, but on their own, without any further assistance. So it was decided or thought at the seminar that because of that, having done it all off their own back without any further assistance directly from the council, they should be given a slightly bigger uplift. I think that was why that decision was taken.
I could understand the rationale and where members from that part of the ward are coming from and want to see an increase, but not to decrease. So I can accept the rationale in terms of the equity, in terms of storing and so forth and so on, but not to reduce the Stranraer by 500, because it's equally as important to the Stranraer area, and as we've not reduced any of the outlying areas across the Shire, then I would hope that we can replace that. And just to, maybe remiss of me, but I would like to support what Kate is saying, if she's got any ideas on how we could be more and how we actually use this money, rather than every year the same. More radical was the word I was looking for there, Chair. If there's any suggestions on that coming for Katie.
I don't know if Ingrid wants to come in at all there, but before, no, I would just like to say that obviously that is why the seminar was so important. You know, I understand everybody's schedules and portfolios are very busy, but that seminar allows for much greater discussion and debate as to the merits of increasing or decreasing. There only is a finite pot. So yes, you're in agreement that with the premise that Newton Stewart does it all on its own, it has done, and doesn't get any additional extra help, like Stranraer from the council. So to increase Newton Stewart has to come from elsewhere, because there is only a finite amount of money. So to increase another, you would have to decrease somewhere else. There was no other choice in doing so. And the fact that I think whatever the cost of the Christmas light in Stranraer, I was led to believe that whatever that cost was, any additional, whatever that number may be, would be met by the council. If that isn't the case, then I stand corrected, but that's what I was led to believe. Okay, Councillor Dashburn, do you want to come in at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would echo the comments from Councillor Hagman and Councillor Scobie. I think Councillor Scobie's on the money when he says he wants something more radical. Well, so do I. If it was up to me, I'd put less money into events and more money into things which maybe provide long-term material benefits for the community of Stranraer, like, painting walls and fixing fences. But that's neither here nor there at the minute. I guess my question is in regards to awarding Wigtownshire, we're setting aside this money for them. If I recall last year, there was some debate around the money which they already had as a constituted group in their bank account already, and whether this was something that they could perhaps already put a bit more towards themselves in terms of self-funding this event. And it is a ticketed event, so I don't know how comfortable the committee is with every year giving money towards a ticketed event, an event which people need to pay to get into. Shouldn't we be giving more money towards free events which are available for everyone in the community? So if Councillor Hagman or Councillor Scobie are suggesting that as a motion or amendment, then I'd be happy to support. Thanks.
I don't see anyone else coming in there, Councillor Dashburn. I'm going to bring in Councillor McCammon.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I must admit, I've got no questions with specific allocations. I am, however, very much like everybody else that's spoken, a wee bit confused about the rationale, to be honest. I don't want to see anybody get more than the other and vice versa, and I hear poor Richard doing a lot of explaining about the seminar when he was merely an attendee. So it's not, in my opinion, the chair's responsibility to be recapping and summarising what a seminar was, so I'll leave that to Ingrid. So I guess what I'm asking is, what is the rationale? So I'm guessing, as we know, a seminar is not a decision-making body, as many people have said, but we keep referring back to it. I appreciate that officers do have to go on feedback from the seminar, but in terms of allocation, I'm guessing members haven't allocated specific amounts. That's not been our decision. So I think from the start, from when Katie started speaking, the rationale behind it is still a wee bit unclear. So I don't know if Ingrid can come in again, just how we've arrived at these sums, please, because I think that's what's confusing most people.
Ingrid, could you assist at all? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for your question, Councillor McCarman. So I guess the seminar is an opportunity for members to come together and to discuss the budget and to consider how that budget may well be best spent in terms of a recommendation that comes to this committee. What's been presented today is based on the discussions that were had that day. It is up for members to make ultimately the decisions that they want to take around this budget, and nothing that's in what's being proposed today is set in stone. It's for members to have that discussion and debate and come to any conclusions that are made. It's not for me as an officer, it's for members.
Thank you, Ingrid. I can see a hand. Councillor Hagman, do you want to come back in there?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I was sort of looking back. So it's the 27th of March when the seminar was, and I did indicate I was actually chairing a national committee at the time, so I wasn't, I was sitting in the chair elsewhere. I think it's disappointing there wasn't other opportunities to feed in, and certainly, I appreciate the sort of support in my comments. I would like to see this done in a different way. And I'm just looking at the sort of schedule. Our next meeting after today is not until September. So if we weren't to agree something going forward today, there would be a delay in that. And I appreciate, some of our communities might be reliant or might be expecting the sort of small grants as they might go forward to organise summer fetes, and also, preparing for Christmas decorations, because let's be realistic. You don't just decide the week before Christmas what you're going to put up. Communities need to plan. So I would like to see it done radically differently. Let's be really brave going forward. Actually, why are we not asking our communities what they would like this £60,000 to be spent on? Why are we solely making the decisions ourselves? And I know it's not a huge amount of money, but to some small communities, that is a huge amount of money. So I guess, again, I'll sort of put it back to members, if we're not going to change it this time round and we want to maybe stick with the format as is, although I would propose that we look at festival events equally and actually remove awarding Wigtownshire and invite them into the small grant scheme with everybody else, and that would be a proposal that I would bring forward. Can we please maybe do a task of work that for next year, if there is a discretionary grant, because obviously that's a budget decision that will get taken place next year, that we actually do not follow the normal or quote unquote normal way forward, and actually we decide and we look at a different way to engage with our communities as to how they would like this money to be spent, and whether we do that through some participatory budgeting or whether we even just do that on a poll out to our community councils. Let's use our communities who are active and engaged with the council. And it might be that the vast majority want all the money to be spent on Christmas lights. And if that's the will of the people, so to speak, let's go with that. So yeah, that's my sort of two suggestions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hagman. So just to clarify, in my mind, looking at recommendations, we're happy with 2.1 to note. 2.2, are we happy with the strategic framework contained in Appendix 1? Are we also happy with that? Councillor Hagman, as far as recommendations go, are you happy to accept the strategic framework as it is, or are you talking about an overhaul?
So no, I mean, the strategic framework as the advice that's just been given by Ingrid has already been set. So we're just being asked to note this. I don't think we have the ability to change it, but for future years, I think it's really vital that we look at that.
So today, as far as 2.4 goes, are you wishing to make an alteration to the figures set out today?
So I would propose, I mean, I take on board the comments that Councillor Scobie has made in terms of the Christmas lights, etc. I've listened to the debate. I'm well aware of how fantastic the Newton Stewart Christmas Light Group have done. My basis is always to base it on the actual facts and keep us equitable. And I appreciate that previously it was done on per capita. However, what I haven't heard, and it might be useful, is how much additional resource has the council put into the Stranraer lights that other areas haven't. Again, we don't have that information, so it makes it very, very difficult to be able to understand the rationale for those two points. My suggestion would be in terms of the festival and events, and we just have one category of festival and events, and that small grant schemes of up to £1,000. So it's not to remove awarding Wigtownshire and say that they're not eligible at all, but just that they fit within that one category, because there's two categories for festival events. Let's just have one, and let's have it for up to £1,000.
So just to confirm, Councillor Hagman, are you proposing that? Do you require a seconder to make that alteration today?
I'm happy to take a seconder. It's always helpful if we've got consensus going forward rather than a vote, but I'll put it to them other members.
If other members are inclined, do we require to take it to a vote if other members are in agreement?
No, only goes to a vote if members aren't all in agreement, Chair.
Councillor Scobie, did you want to come back in there?
Yeah, Chair, it's just on the debate and discussion that has taken place, and that's to return the £500 back to the Stranraer Christmas light, accepting what has been said in that Newton Stewart feels that they want to increase on the Christmas lights, and I understand the reasons, perhaps looking at equity again, it's so that we return that £500 and that we go with what Kate is saying in terms of treating everybody the same in events, and seeing that come forward and with an interest, notice of interest or whatever it's called. So I would go with that.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Councillor Dashburn, do you want to come in at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if there's unanimous consent, then I don't need a second Councillor Hagman's motion. But just to touch on the point that she made about community engagement, I'm actually wondering if it's worth having something as official as a ward event even across the two wards, just to really get to grips and sort out all our various funding pots. We've got this grant, we've got the poverty grant, and we've got the various common good funds locally. So I'm wondering if having that real discussion with the community, let's hear what their priorities are, and let's get this down on paper for going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dashburn. Right, just to summarise where we are. Claire, are you able to do that for me?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I've got two amendments basically, which would be an increase of £500 to the Stranraer Christmas lights, and there would be just one category for festival and events, and which would mean that the second bottom line to awarding Wigtownshire, that would be removed. Okay, so there's 1,500 then not allocated, or did that all just go into the festival and events? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Scobie, you want to come back in there?
Yeah, Chair, and I think if we are looking at this and events, I think we've got to take what Ben was saying there in terms of paying by ticket and so forth and so on. Actually look at that along with, when it comes forward, and for officers to do likewise. Is it something that we would want to award towards? If it's by paying event against anyone that's putting on a free, that's there for everyone. I know that's how we generally look at the common good, and it's for the benefit of the burgers or Stranraer as it's put down, and it's not just specific to one area. So I think we've seriously got to look at that.
I will just add that obviously I'm aware of awarding Wigtownshire. It is a marvellous showpiece event that does highlight the good work of businesses within the area, and I think we should be going some way to support that, because it does highlight and showcase the hard work of businesses within the area. But I do take your point, Councillor Scobie, about the ticketed event. Okay, to bring this to a close then, to go to recommendation, obviously in subsequent years, it would sound like we want to have a review of how this is done. We can take that forward for subsequent years. But to finalise this at recommendation 2.4, are we agreed with the proposals to revert back the 500 and put the allocation of 2,000 back into the small grants pot? Just to confirm we're all in agreement with that.
Chair, would that be 1,500, not the 2,000, because if the 500 goes to Stranraer? Because I presume we're not looking to take away from Newton Stewart, we're just looking to add into Stranraer.
Apologies, Councillor Hagman, noted. So we're now all in agreement. Thank goodness. Right. Item number 7. Area Committee Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Budget 24-25. The next report for members is the other budget report tackling poverty and inequalities. Members are very aware through monitoring reports of the significant impact of these budget allocations to our communities. Again, I'll ask members to first agree to note the budget allocation available, in this case £45,450. And if members are happy to note, we'll go on to further discussion. We then are asked to agree the priorities, eligibility and criteria as detailed in the appendix. Once again, we have Gillian and Ingrid here to answer any questions for members. I'll open the floor to members' questions and comments. Excellent. We appear to be all happy with that. Wonderful. We'll move to Councillor Hagman.
Chair. Yep. No, I'm just looking at the priorities, and unfortunately, it doesn't have. And I've actually noted this on the last item. It doesn't have what the priorities were last year, because it is quite useful maybe to compare. So maybe for future reports under the background papers and relevant committee decisions, can we maybe get the previous reports included in that next time round? But within the appendix on page 40, it states that every project, point 14, applying for funding must demonstrate how it will ultimately assist to reduce child poverty, as well as. Is that a new addition this year? And it's not one that I'm against, absolutely not. I think, child poverty is really important, and we must be as a community doing everything we possibly can. But is that a new addition this year, or a new suggestion this year for the priorities?
Ingrid, could you assist there?
Sorry, Councillor Hagman, could you just tell me where you're reading that, please?
Yeah, so page 40, under priorities, it makes reference that how the project will ultimately assist to reduce child poverty, as well as, and I'm just conscious in the past we've maybe used some of the anti-poverty funding to assist with digital connectivity to help those unemployed access employment opportunities. Well, if they don't have children, then that's not that any project that would almost exclude that project. And as I say, it's not one that I would argue against at all. But is that a new addition this year? Because I don't recall that seeing in the priorities in previous years when we've looked at the anti-poverty funding.
Sorry, I was dreaming. Ingrid, do you want to come in there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. No, just to say that none of the priorities for 2024-25 were changed at all, so that is just exactly the same as it was the previous year. Again, you know, the eligibility criteria and priorities, you know, members, this was a recommendation at the seminar, but this can be amended as members see fit today.
Okay, no, thanks for that. I mean, I'm quite happy to leave that in if members are, but can we just make sure that that's highlighted to all applicants? Because I don't know if it has previously, that actually our priority is child poverty. It's not, as well as these other things, but the number one priority for this funding and eligibility is child poverty by that point 14. So just to make that really clear in any communications that go out. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hagman. I'm quite sure we could affirm that and make sure that is highlighted in the process. Any further questions at all? If not, we'll move to recommendations. Members were asked to 2.1, note the tackling poverty and inequalities budget for 24-25 of £45,450. 2.2, agree the priorities, eligibility and criteria for the Wigtown Area Committee tackling poverty and inequalities budget. And 2.3, agree to open a large and small grant scheme for applications to this fund. Agreed. Wonderful. Item number 8. Community Asset Transfer Applications Update. Oh, once again, thank you, ladies. Oh. The next report on the agenda was requested by members at their 6th of March meeting, and this report updates on the progress of community asset transfers in our area. The report provides background on CATs and details of both expressions of interest and developing applications. It is good to see the detail of the amount of funding levered into our communities using asset transfer as a basis, and to see the figures both for Wigtown and the region. The report lists the properties and land transferred in our area and the organisations currently going through the process. There are also 2 community asset transfer reports for us to consider in the latter part of the agenda today. The report asks us to note the current position of CAT applications and to commend the local organisations, community transfer bodies, for the significant investment they have brought into the area. The Ward 1 and 2 officers, Gillian and Melinda, are present to answer member questions today. I'll open the floor to questions. Councillor Dashper.
Hi, thank you, Chair. No, thanks to the ward officers for the work that they've done. It's actually good to see that there's so many people locally who are interested in taking over these assets. My question is really just about, if you look at page 41, 4.1 and 4.12, talks about the CAT strategy, which was agreed in 2017 and updated as recently as 2019. Again, that's pre-pandemic, so I'm just sort of asking when that would be up for renewal across the council, if we know that. Moving on, I was recently contacted, probably about a fortnight ago, by people in Kirkham who are taking on the car park there as a community asset transfer, and this was agreed by the council some time ago, but they contacted me because it hasn't been done yet, and they're still waiting on the council facilitating that for them. So I don't know if you've got any specific update on that one, or if we could get that communicated to us over email afterwards. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Dashper. First of all, I'll bring in Jamie on your first point.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Dashper. I think it was related to the review of the strategy for community asset transfer. And yes, the strategy for community asset transfer is due for review. What we've been waiting for is, because the Community Empowerment Act Scotland 2015 is being reviewed in the round, we were delaying the review of community asset transfer pending the guidance from Scottish Government changing, because I guess we didn't see the point in changing the strategy and then the guidance changes to be different from what our strategy is. Although the Community Empowerment Review is taking, and rightly so, a considerable amount of time, because there's a huge consultative exercise nationally around that. We're setting by the end of the calendar year to go for the review of community asset transfer, and if the guidance changes, we'll just have to change again to catch up with that. So we're planning a members' seminar. We've certainly got on other aspects of community empowerment, some seminars planned, but we're planning to hold a seminar with members on community asset transfer later in the year after recess. So that's the first one. On Kirkcaldy as well, just a wee one on Kirkcaldy. Can certainly update you on that. That's sitting with our legal, as far as I know, and with the applicants, the successful applicants, a considerable amount of time ago, to be honest, sitting with their lawyers as well. We have an update from legal. I can't quite remember, to be honest, what the position is, but I'm happy to come back to yourself and other members on that from our legal. Just what the updated position is on that. I'm seeing a thumbs up there, Councillor Dashford. Does that resonate okay?
That's great. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Grand, thank you, Jamie. And Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, it's maybe just clarification. I don't know if anyone is able to give it today, but there is asset transfer in terms of the numbers that are here. But it's really around the common good and whether we can get total clarification on in terms of any asset transfer that is owned by the common good. I know we've got alienable and inalienable, if I can get my tongue around that word, issues in there, but we need clarity. And I understand that our lawyers were talking to New King's Council as to how we respond to applications coming in that is owned by the common good. Have we got any clarity in that as yet, or can we get an update on it, please?
Jamie, could you come in there?
Keep me right on the question. I'm not absolutely 100% clear. It's quite a wide question on common good. Properties for common good, as you know, Councillor, can be alienable or inalienable. I'm just trying that myself round the tongue. If they are inalienable, they can be inalienable for various reasons. Usually to do with burdens. I'm not a lawyer, but I'll try and explain that. There can be an old burden on a property that's maybe been gifted to the common good or gifted via the council to hold in kind of stewardship. So one example I might give is New Galloway Town Hall. Right? Just for example, New Galloway Town Hall had a burden on it that when the building was held by the common good, it was always to be used as a town hall, which was great in the age when town halls were devolved local government, but maybe isn't so useful in modern currency. So what that means is it's not a deal breaker that if the community can find a use for that building and you know, we don't transfer, we try to say we don't transfer to organisations, we try to transfer to the benefit of the local community. If they're coming up with a use for that building and the application is agreeable, we need to go back to sheriffs, we need to go back to court to get that burden removed. Often sheriffs can see the rationale for that and are in agreement with it. So I know that there's a look being taken at common goods generally, and a look and cats would form part of that kind of reappraisal or reassessment of common goods. I don't know if that quite hits your question.
It goes some of the way in terms of the burden, and that burden then it may be for the sheriff to determine because it's for the good of the people, as common good land is. But there are two aspects. One was in terms of King George V Plainfield, and that's common good. And it was for the change of use on that one at one time. And then there's the other one in terms of Stair Park. And we need clarity in terms of burden, as Jamie has outlined, but not to leave it hanging there so that people don't know, how they can apply if there are burdens attached, or it's just a straightforward following procedures and guidance. So I think we do need clarity, notwithstanding what Jamie said. There may be burdens attached, and I can understand those. But if that's the case, then at least we've got to that stage, and we're able either to just halt with any proceedings, or the organisers are able to proceed further. It's so there's no hanging, saying we're still waiting on King's Council opinion.
Could you just clarify that about the burdens, please, Jamie?
Yes. I don't know how helpful this is going to be. The burdens could be complicated. Legally, they can be complicated, and it can take time. However, the regulations that I'm aware of from through the Scottish Government on community asset transfer do say that communities can apply for any land or any property that is either owned or leased by a public body. So technically they can. Sometimes if the transfer, if it's particularly challenging, and we know sometimes it can be, we try to be as clear with communities as we can. But it tends to be that councils, not just Dumfries and Galloway Council, all councils, they own historically a huge range of properties, and sometimes the burdens only become clear when the question is asked, right? I know it's a chicken and egg one, and what you're saying is it would be really good to have that list of everything that was owned. That's what I hear you saying. And to know where all the underlying parts lay in terms of the implications of burdens. Practically, in terms of capacity, it doesn't tend to work that way. It tends to be that when the question's asked, it's then explored in more detail, which is a bit of a more lengthy process. But in terms of capacity, that's how it works. I hope that's helpful. It might not be the answer we're looking for.
Councillor Scobie?
It is helpful. I now know where it lies in terms of burden, and however complex that burden may be, it allows it to move forward and for someone to determine then. So that's helpful, rather than just saying it's lying over here and still not got an answer in terms of opinion. It is helpful. So thank Jamie for that.
Do we have any further questions? Yeah, Gillian, please come in.
Thank you. Just a quick update. Councillor Scobie, I've got a meeting with Property Services and Community Assets in relation to the King George V playing fields later on in the week, so I can update you after that.
Councillor McCammon, please come in.
That's fine. In the past, I have had, so as an example, I've had 2 or 3 groups come to me about the same property, asset, blah, blah, blah. Now, Jamie, you and I have had a conversation about encouraging working together, and I am fully on board with that. So, and it's just an example, the clock tower in Newton Stewart. So both groups come together and say, look, we're interested in this. What is the conversation we have with them, particularly if they have the same business plan? Because I understand that you cannot force them to work together, and I would never put that on you, any group. But it does seem counterproductive when there are, for example, 2 groups with the same plan for the same community, but want to do it separately. It just doesn't ring sensible to me. So from a council's approach, I'm interested to know what conversations happen, what you're able to do, and it's not in specific. It is simply just if 2, 3, 4 groups come to you and ask about the same plan or the same building even, what's the process we go through to try and get them to work together? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. And thank you for the empathy behind the question. It's much appreciated. We're hot in this one because we have had those conversations very recently. Right? We have often we have done an awful lot of community asset transfers now as a council. Right? So we're kind of, and you know, at the early stages, I suppose we were learning how do we handle some of these sort of situations. What do we do around it? The national guidance isn't particularly clear on that respect, and as you know, it's when our communities work together, and you can see some examples of that in terms of place planning, some really excellent work from groups working together. It's fantastic. Things work great. However, everything's not always sunny in the garden, and our communities sometimes are conflicted, often are conflicted. Sometimes in inverse ratio to the size of the community, surprisingly. Some of the bigger communities cohere sometimes more easily than the smaller communities. So what do we do? Right? We've had that conversation recently. We have written to 2 groups saying our expectation is that you're working with the same community. We are not in the business, and the community asset transfer process isn't about handing properties to organisations, although it is. It's about the benefit of the community, right? And if 2 groups are competing, if you go to funders with 2 groups competing within an area, funders are not going to look favourably in that. They're going to be saying, wait a minute, there's only one community. Why are you both applying for funding for the same thing? So similarly with council, I mean, council does not want to exacerbate any conflict within communities, right? If that is unhealthy. So we will always look to the benefits of the local community, and we'll always look to the groups to please work together as much as you can. To the extent we will say to them that, you know, it's at the discretion of councillors, but it's difficult to see the merits of 2 groups competing and fighting over one property. So there always is that capacity to say, well, nobody gets it, and the community doesn't benefit actually. But having said that, there may be better applications from one group than another. That's a possibility, you know, within any community. One group may have more capacity and so on. So what we would do in that case is we would score. We would move to scoring under social value. We would move to scoring under a best value, because we've got 2 different approaches to considering a CAT. One under the kind of social value engine approach. It's not an exact science, but it gives us a good bead on it. And one under the kind of other benefits, right? And then we would present whatever report was validated earlier to members for consideration. But we'd always point out there was another group that was interested. It's not ideal, but it's not an ideal situation. It's probably the best we can arrive at.
Does that suffice, Councillor McCammon?
Yes, it does. I have many more questions, but I'll take it offline.
Belinda, do you have anything to add to that at all?
No, I'm quite happy with that.
No problem.
And happy to speak offline as well.
Grand. If there are no further questions, we'll move to recommendation. Members were asked at 2.1, note the current position of the expressions of interest in stage 2 applications for wards 1 and 2 as detailed in section 4 in the appendix, and 2.2, commend the communities for significant inward investment levered through their efforts. And one last point there, Jamie, would you just like to come in?
Just a quick one. I don't think we've included it, but for comparison purposes, throughout the region at the moment, the council has awarded properties to the value of £3 million. Our current figures are that we'll still get some to come in, but we did a survey of the community groups to look at funding that's been levered in on the back of these awards of properties and land. And currently we're sitting at £28 million. So it's about a 9 times capacity for levering in funding through the investment of the building.
Clearly a significant inward investment there. Item number 9. Our next report is a community asset transfer request from the Furniture Project Stranraer, trading as the Community Reuse Shop, for the transfer of land at the Community Reuse Shop at the Waste Recycling Centre, Stranraer. The report presents the business plan for the organisation, along with the officers' social value assessments and best value evaluation. Members will recall that for this report and the next one that follows, this area committee has delegation to make recommendations to the FPT committee for their decision. We have Gillian Collins here today. You may have some additional information to add to the report before we take members' questions. Over to you, Gillian.
Thank you. There was some information that came in late on yesterday from Property and Estates. So currently in the report there is no value attached to the land that's part of the asset transfer request. So the update from Property Services is there's sort of on the appendix, I think it's Appendix 3, there's 2 almost squares as part of the map. So the first, the larger piece of ground has been valued by Colliers a few years ago and the value is £50,000. And then the smaller piece of land that forms the sort of smaller square on the map has been assessed to be similar to industrial land sold in 2017 in Stranraer. So the comparable figure for that is £22,190. So a rough estimate for the land value would be £72,190. But that's not been by it's not been validated by a qualified or registered valuer because the council doesn't have one at the moment, but that is just a bit of a ballpark figure for members.
Grand, thank you, Gillian. I don't know if Jamie would like to come in. No. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I'm looking at this application under transfer, community asset transfer, and I think this has been a long outstanding issue. And that's not a criticism of anyone, it's following different stages, and the council has supported the moving forward of this proposal. I'm looking at the benefits, and just, you know, there are numerous benefits detailed there. But in particular, I'm looking at, you know, the amount of waste that has been redirected into the community, the furniture project or the community reuse shop. And by doing, if we agree to this, we would be increasing the volume throughout many other different areas, both in the Stewartry and in Wigtownshire. And the figures there speak for themselves, of 255.09 tonnes diverted from landfill to the community reuse shop. And again, some in terms of social value, the reusing of over 149,000 items by, again, 64,664 customers. So in terms of social value, as we see on page 56, this is indicative of a very strong social value, this project. And to transfer the land, they would then be looking at building and to increase their activity. And part of that is, as is referred in the report, is for incubators. And that's to, again, provide small enterprise, people who are in the recycling, to look at how they could create opportunities, jobs and so forth, and their own business. When we look at page 52, against what Gillian has just provided us with the value, and I think we see here, when it was the original moving away from the Dix Hill as to where they were located up to the industrial estate and to what Cheekby Jail, with the reuse centre or waste centre, which I think is unique throughout Dumfries and Galloway anyway, but maybe even in Scotland. We see there that the furniture project at that time, the group drew down some £500,000 to do the building. They don't own the land, but they own the building. And I would imagine that would be the same, that if they got the transfer, they would need to go to wherever they can source the monies, and that could be from landfill or wherever. But that again would be an equivalent. So in doing so, we are drawing down on external funding to complete the project. So in terms of social value and economic value, I think that it's what, you know, it would be a good investment for us to transfer this land to allow them. As far as I understand, and maybe it can be confirmed, but this has got the support, and indeed James MacLeod was a referee or whatever it is in terms of, so he supports the whole move of this and the development of this project in that sense. So I see many aspects of this that are very, very positive, and I would like to see us going for option one in the options that are before us today for the very reasons. And there are many others. I don't want to take up the time, but for those reasons, I would hope that we can recommend to Finance and Procurement that we go for option one on a asset transfer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. I think Jamie, would like to come in at this point.
Yeah, not sure if it's a question, but I can just confirm our waste management through James MacLeod is totally supportive, yes.
Grand. Next up, we have Councillor Hagman.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So yeah, I think just reflecting on Jamie's final comments from the last report shows the social value of these projects and the ability to lever in funding. And I know that the legislation is the presumption that we absolutely transfer unless there is good reason not to. And certainly looking at page 55 across to 56, I don't think I've ever quite seen as many bullet points of benefits in a community asset transfer. And there's only one disbenefit insofar that we'd not be able to lease the property. So, I think it's very, very clear. It's referenced in the officer's assessment of the proposal on page 54 that it is a strong case to go forward. I think it's really disappointing that we haven't done our own homework in terms of only now getting the value of the land being reported today as, that approximately 72,000. And I know it's a comment I've made previously, and I feel like I've taken up the mantle from Councillor Jane Maitland last term of at what point do we look beyond the £1 price of that transfer. But I'm absolutely not going to stand in the way of this going forward. I think it is a great project. I think we absolutely need to be behind this and following the officer recommendation as well. So I'm really happy to support Councillor Scobie's recommendation to go for option one. There is obviously the option of looking at clawback, but I don't think that we maybe have all the correct information in terms of the land value and going forward. And actually there has to be an element of trust. This community group have worked really hard to bring together some fantastic benefits to the community. So I just want to wish them the very best of luck. Obviously, we'll debate this again further at FPT, but happy to support option one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hagman. Councillor Scobie? No, you were given by the eye there.
No, it's maybe, and one that is pertinent to the current time. And it's just looking at these and how the project does contribute towards some of the climate change targets. And in increasing that, then we're increasing those figures in terms of the whole climate change and targets that we have set ourselves.
Yeah, just to echo those comments, it's a hugely impressive business plan report. That it's a long-standing history the furniture project have had. The benefits to the community are insurmountable. Without question, I would agree with my two fellow councillors to go for option 1 for this. If we have no further questions, let's move to recommendations. Members were asked at 2.1.1, consider the furniture project Stranraer trading as the community reuse shop. The transfer request laid out in the stage 2 asset transfer application. At 2.1.2, consider the outcome of the officer's assessment in relation to the council's requirement to meet best value as detailed within the report. 2.1.3, to note the outcome of the social value assessment. And 2.2, we now agree to move forward with option 1. Excellent. Item number 10. The community asset transfer, the pavilion, Corroxray Avenue, Binnygaff. Our next report is a community asset transfer for the Newton Stewart Men's Shed for the transfer of the pavilion and land at Binnygaff Pavilion, Newton Stewart. The report presents the business plan for the organisation along with the officer's social value assessment and best value evaluation. As per the previous community asset transfer application, this area committee has the delegation to make recommendations to the FPT committee for their decision. We have Melinda Dolan here again to assist and answer any members' questions. Members, open the floor to you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so I think, as I said at the start, I had a statement of connection, and so far that when they very first took forward a lease, I was invited to get a tour, and I think it's well documented how impactful the men's sheds projects across the region and across the country have been. So, I think, again, a lot of praise on the organisation for bringing it forward. Obviously, the report before us also says that there's a strong case for the asset transfer. And I'm just touching upon page 129 and paragraph 4.1.9. And it makes reference to the fact that the current lease requires local groups requiring toilet and kitchen facilities for their events should be given. And certainly in the recommendation, the recommendation is to go for option 2, which includes conditions. But it doesn't say what conditions we should be attaching. I'm just slightly concerned as to whether transferring a property but saying you can only transfer part of it because the toilets don't, and you have to keep that open for the public events, and I absolutely understand why, because certainly gala days and the pageant etc have always used, well not always, but for a large proportion of time used those facilities, so there'll be a lot of concern from the community if they no longer can. But how does this sit legally? And has that condition, if we were to impose a condition around the access to toilets, has that been a condition that's been attached to other community assets transfers? And how has that worked out? I'm just conscious that there'll be a lot of tools, there might be some really expensive equipment, and appreciate that the group have already done this, and I would hope that that would be ongoing. But to actually make it a condition, I'm just not 100% comfortable on the way forward with that one. So it's really to maybe ask advice from officers. Has that type of condition been attached in other applications, and how's it worked out? Did it work out okay?
Thank you, Councillor Hagman. I haven't read the report, the same issue arose with me as well, but I think Jamie can come in here to answer that.
Thanks for the question. It's the right question. How we would look at this is it's a kind of by consent one, I suppose. I'm not answering from a legal perspective here because I'm not qualified to answer from that perspective. But what we would do with this weather condition set by Finance Procurement Committee was to work with our legal around this. I appreciate, it's a men's shed and it's a dedicated space, and as you say, Councillor Hagman, there would be the tools there would be the implements that the group would want to keep safe, and also to keep safe from the public as well. So there'd be a kind of firewall bit there. I think for the toilets, my understanding is, Melinda will know better than I do, but there's a kind of separate entrance part, but for the toilets. So I mean, we'd work with the group and we'd work with our legal to look at what we can do to set that as a sort of condition, so that access for the public could be maintained. But that would be with the group's consent. In terms of use of kitchen facilities, let's say, which I don't think are as firewalled, that would be a different sort of arrangement, and that would be a kind of by negotiation with the group. But those that are legally trained would be able to work with us to set up those sort of conditions around that, as part of the transfer process. I don't know, Melinda, am I explaining that okay?
I agree with that, yes. The toilets can be separated out. There's a lockable door between, but the kitchens can't be. So as a condition for ongoing community use of the toilets, that wouldn't be an issue. But ongoing use of the kitchen would need to be by negotiation with the club, event by event, and wouldn't be something that we would be recommending to be part of the condition of the transfer.
Thank you, Melinda, and also Jamie. Councillor Scobie, did you want to come back?
Can I just
sorry,
come back
Councillor
in?
Hagman. On you go.
Sorry. So can I just check if the toilets in effect, and it would be really useful to actually see the floor plan. I mean, I've been in the pavilion many times. I used to take my son to Messy Clay there and used it as a community facility. But if the toilets can be separated out, is there an opportunity to keep the toilets as public toilets as council run, and separate the building from that point of view? I'm just concerned that we're making it slightly messy here.
Melinda, could you come in there, please?
My understanding is that they're not public toilets in the sense of open public toilets. They would be opened if there was an event in the park. So they are locked. The building would, before the men's shed took over, the building would be locked, and if you needed access to that for an event, you would seek that access at that time. So it's not a public toilet in the sense that we would maybe understand it. So by having the men's shed, they obviously use those toilets as part of the facility, and it would be form part of the men's shed, but they would be interested in helping and supporting, and have indicated that they would help support other groups to use that if they needed it for events in the park.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, just before I bring you in, Councillor Scobie, I would also add to that by saying it is a well-used community space. If we were to agree the recommendation with option 2 and conditions, I think we would need to go some way to reassure the members that the event space could still be used by the provision of toilets. I don't know, as you say, if the kitchen aspect of it can be worked into that, but we would have to ensure that is within the conditions of the agreement. Mr. Scobie, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I think maybe you've summed up that likewise as Katie, and I don't want to, I'm no 100% familiar with the actual building, but I think we should learn lessons for the past when we have transferred toilets, and people do fall out, unfortunately, but there's an indication that they have indicated that this will continue to, should the community asset transfer be agreed, that they would make those available. But as long as we just write it in that if they are happy with that, they will continue to make them available to events in toilets and so forth, because it is important. And as I say, we learn from past where we have transferred and then the whole thing, they locked and so forth. So I think we do need to learn.
I think Jamie would like to come in just to add to that, Councillor Scobie.
No, just to say the point's taken, because where, you know, members can maybe see benefits for, you know, men's shed, and some members have expressed that the benefits are there, but also we want to benefit the wider community as well. So we don't want to imbalance one benefit against an unintended disbenefit to the community. So I think that's the point where, you know, if the conditions are set, then with legal, we look at what that actually looks like in terms of you know, titles and transaction.
Thank you, Jamie. Just to add to that, the other issue potentially is with access. The little access road there is also used by, you know, members of the public who stay up Fairway Drive. In the report, it does state that in time, the men's shed would like to maybe increase the size of what is currently a turning area. But I believe that the less mobile members of the men's shed currently do park in that. And obviously, we would need to ensure that that doesn't become an issue for the residents that are staying up Fairway Drive. There is a car park at Minigaff Playing Fields that could be used with a smooth laid path to that men's shed. But at the moment, I've been told anecdotally that some members are parking within that turning space, and obviously that may well inhibit residents getting to their homes. So we need to ensure that within the condition that's highlighted also. Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. I guess it's a governance question I've got. So we've got three options before us, 1, 2 or 3, and certainly with the discussion around potential conditions, you know, I'd be happy to support option 2. I wouldn't not look to recommend a transfer, so that discounts option 3. But it says with conditions agreed by members, and I don't think we've really got the full information to agree what those conditions would be. I'm happy to agree that there would be some conditionality around toilets, but not necessarily the kitchen. But actually, for some of those, for more information to be presented to FPT before the final decision has been made, because I don't think that we can make a final decision at this point. We can make a recommendation, but I don't think we can recommend the specific conditions as indicated in option 2. So is there a form of wording that we can adapt option 2 to ensure that that work is done prior to coming to FPT?
Thank you, Councillor Hagman. I'll bring Claire back in for this point.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members, you can certainly agree that option 2 would be your preferred option, noting that you would like more information on the conditions available when the report comes to FPT.
Is it appropriate today for members to suggest what should be included within that condition? So if we're in agreement, obviously the toilets would be number 1, the accessibility of the toilets, but the access of the Fairway Drive, that would have to be considered also, and the turning area that's currently being used by some less able members to park in. Obviously there need to be something mentioned around the accessibility and the usage of that to not impede residents getting to their homes. Melinda, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, it was just to say that the turning point isn't part of the community asset transfer. They've not indicated that they want to take that, but they have indicated in their business plan that they are looking to try and create parking space within the boundaries of the land that they are taking on. So to me, that would indicate that turning circle remains and it belongs still with the council, and they would create something on their own ground for their disabled parking bays, but happy to include whatever members feel is appropriate.
Thank you, Melinda. Councillor Hagman.
Yeah, thanks. I think Melinda's just confirmed what I was going to ask. It's not included in there, so I would be loath to add in complications where we don't need to, because that's currently public accessibility, and you know, I don't think we need to even mention this at that point because it doesn't form part of the application. So I would be loath to not include this at this point. But obviously, I think, you know, if it's agreed, I think perhaps a letter to residents, maybe just confirming what has been agreed, so residents are content that actually the turning circle and the access is complete there. It's not affected at all by any decision that's made by the council, you know, to offer that reassurance to the community. Thanks.
Grand. Thank you, Councillor Hagman. Yep, if we can add that reassurance into the conditions, then I think we're all agreed that we would accept the recommendations given option 2. So the recommendations were at 2.1 to agree to withdraw delegations. Oh no, wait a minute, that's the wrong report, apologies. At 2.1 was to consider the Newton Stewart Men's Shed transfer request as laid out in the Stage 2 Community Asset Transfer application. At 2.2, consider the outcome of the officer's assessment of the request in relation to the Council's requirement to meet best value. And 2.3, note the outcome of the social value assessment for the proposed transfer as detailed within the report. And 2.4, agree the option, which I believe is option 2, to take forward to the FPT committee. Okay, item number 11. The application for financial assistance at Whithorn Common Good Fund. The final report asked members to consider an application for financial assistance submitted by Whithorn Play Park Projects. There is no meeting of Whithorn and Wigtown Common Good Fund subcommittee arranged until September 24, and the event is being held on the 25th of May 24. So members are asked to consider this as a matter of business at the Wigtown Area Committee. Members are asked to consider an award of £500 from the Common Good Fund to the Whithorn Play Park Project. I am sure that members of the Wigtown Common Good Fund present here will be in a good position to comment on this application. We also have Melinda here today to assist. I'll open up to members if they have any questions. Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. So I understand there's logistics in terms of trying to pull these meetings together and members' availability. And I know we've had, if we've needed a meeting, we've had a meeting in the past. So I don't recall being asked if I was available for an extra meeting, but if, you know, we are where we are and it's before us today. My only comment is the Common Good always has a community representative on it as well. And while they maybe don't have a vote, their knowledge and insight to the local area is always really helpful. So have we at least consulted with the community representative? I know in the past the community representative has maybe come from the community council, and we'd no longer have a community council in Whithorn, so maybe that's our rationale that we don't have that input. But I'm just looking for that sense check of, have we checked with the community? I have no issue with the project and I'm quite happy for that to be approved, but I also just want to just double check that we're listening to the community as well. Thanks.
Grand, I'll pass over to Melinda for that one.
Thanks, Councillor Hagman. You're absolutely right. There is no community council, and the rep was from the community council, so we weren't able to have a representative from Whithorn. We did speak to the representative from Wigtown, who's also on the committee, but because it wasn't a report from his community and he had other things on, he wasn't able to come along, so we have no representative from the community at the meeting.
Councillor Hammond, do you want to come back there?
Yep, and considering this is the only application for the Whithorn Common Good, if there is no community council and so therefore no representative, how are we going to fill that vacancy? It's almost an additional recommendation. Obviously, we're being asked to note the free income, and that's one aspect. But you know, maybe do I raise that under any other business, but still connected to Whithorn Community Council? I'm not quite sure in the governance way through of this, but how are we going to fill that vacancy if there is no Community Council, or should we maybe defer the decision until after the Community Council elections in October, where hopefully we will have a Community Council again?
I think Claire will come in to hopefully answer that, Councillor Hagman.
Okay. Yes, you can certainly add a recommendation if that's what you felt, to ask that community representation on the Wigtown Common Good be investigated. I know traditionally they're quite often community council representatives, but they don't have to be community council representatives, or community representatives rather than necessarily community council. And given that the report's here because the need for a decision is quite tenuous, then yeah, obviously it's within the hands of members to make that decision.
So would that suggest, Councillor Hagman, that you wouldn't want to move forward with the award today?
No, not at all, Chair. As I say, it was an additional recommendation. I'm quite happy to agree the award. We have got the free income available. There's only one application. The applications are open at all time. And certainly I know when I've been at community events and giving reports, I have referenced both in Wigtown and Wigtown the Common Good Fund. So it's well known within the local community. So no, happy to agree the recommendation or agree the grant if others are happy to do so. But perhaps maybe add in that final recommendation in the wording that Claire suggested helpfully. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Hagman. If that being the case, then we'll move to recommendations. We're agreeing removing the delegation from the Wigtown and Wigtown Common Good Committee. We're noting the remaining income of £825.50. We're agreeing the grant criteria. And 2.4, agreeing to award the £500 with the additional recommendation that Claire has noted. Agreed? Wonderful. Item 12, any other business. I've not been notified of any other business, so this concludes today's meeting. Thank you very much for all who attended, and have a lovely day.